Welcome to part 1 of this tutorial series where we're creating this lunar lander in Blender. So throughout the tutorial series, I'll be showing the complete process on how to create this lunar lander, including doing all the modeling, the materials, the texture painting, and even creating the environment. Now, this tutorial series is definitely not for beginners, so I'm going to be going a little bit faster and I'm not going to be saying quite as many of the shortcut keys. So if you're a complete beginner to Blender or very new to Blender, then I'd recommend watching my complete Blender beginner tutorial series. Link to that is in the description. But I will also have my screencast keys right down here so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. And this tutorial also works great in both Cycles and Eevee, so I'm going to be using the Cycles rendering engine, but it works great in Eevee as well. So in part 1 and in part 2, we're going to be doing all of the modeling. Then in part 3, we're going to be doing some basic lighting and then adding some basic materials to the object. Then in part 4, we're going to be texture painting a bump map, and we're going to be texture painting a bump map on the main object to add all the cool sci-fi details and greeble, and then we'll also be adding a bunch of decals and kind of stickers onto the object. And then in the last part, in part 5, we'll be setting up the environment and creating the moon rocks. We'll use geometry nodes to place the moon rocks on the ground and then do the rendering and the compositing. And if you enjoy my Blender tutorials and you'd like to help support me and this channel, a great way to do that is by purchasing the finished tutorial project files, where you'll get all the textures to use with the tutorial. You'll also get the finished Blender file and all the final renders. So let's now go over all the textures and resources that you'll need to download to follow along with the tutorial. So all the resources are going to be completely free, and I'll have the links in the video description to all the textures and resources. However, if you'd like to purchase the project files, then you'll get a resource pack, which will come with all the different textures and everything which you'll need to follow along with the tutorial. Or if you don't want to purchase the entire project files, but you'd just like to purchase the resource pack to get all the textures and resources, then you can purchase the resource pack with the links in the description, and it will come with all of these different textures and resources to follow along with the video. So in the resource pack, you'll get these different blueprints and reference images. So this is optional, you don't need to use these, but you can just use these to help you with the modeling if you want to. Now I'm also going to be using this procedural moon surface material, and so that is a tutorial which I created a little while back. So I'll have a link in the description to the tutorial if you want to watch the tutorial, or if you'd like to purchase the procedural material, you can get it with the links in the description. I'm also going to be using this procedural gold solar panels material. So again, I have a tutorial on that. You can watch the tutorial and then import it into the Blender file later in the tutorial series when we create the materials, or you can also purchase the procedural gold solar panels. Now I'm also going to be downloading a few different decals. So I'm going to be downloading this caution image from Pixabay. I'm also going to be downloading this crosshairs image, also an electrical icon, and then also this construction caution stripes image, and then also this USA flag, and all those are from Pixabay. Alright, so here I'm in Blender and let's just start. So I'm just going to delete everything, and I'm just going to go to the add menu and just add a cylinder. So the cylinder is going to be the base of the lander. Now I want it to be more detailed all the way around so it's more smooth. So if I open up the add cylinder settings, I'm just going to double this. So I'll turn the verts to 64. Then I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to scale the entire object by 2.3, just 2.3, so it's a bit bigger. And then let's add a loop cut right here in the center. Then I'm going to go to front view and I'm going to hit Control B for a bevel. Just add a very small bevel right there just to kind of add a cut to split up the top of the lander and the bottom of the lander. Then let's add another loop cut here. So we'll just stick a loop cut there on the top half. So I'll go into wireframe and I'm just going to box select the top here. And let's just scale the top down, and I'll scale it down by 0.5 so it kind of tapers up. Let's save our project, so I'll click on File and Save. And I'll just save this as Lunar Lander in my project files and just save the file. So now what I'm going to do is just bring the top part right down there so it kind of fits that Blender grid. So you can see there's like 2 Blender grids there, and I want this one to be right there at the top of that second grid there. So now let's model kind of like a top hatch where the lander can kind of connect to a space station or dock to a space station. So I'm going to inset this face, then I'm going to extrude it up here, and then I'm going to extrude it and scale it and make it a bit bigger, and then I'm going to extrude this up kind of about that far. Then I'm going to add 2 loop cuts. So Control R, scroll your mouse wheel, and let's just add 2 loop cuts right there. And I'm just going to scale the loop cuts up a bit and then also scale them up on the Z axis. Just like that. So we kind of have that cool bevel there on the edges. Let's now go back into solid view. I'm going to go to the face select. We're going to select this face and we're just going to inset this face. And let's now extrude that face right down there into the hat. Let's now inset this face again, and then we're going to just inset it a little bit so we have another loop there. Then we're going to inset it a third time, and then we're just going to extrude this back down in there. Then we're going to select this loop here, and we're just going to extrude this up to add a bit more details to the top half. Also, I think the top hatch is a little small, so back on front view and wireframe, I can box select this and just bring it up a little bit so it's a little bit bigger. So now what I want to do is model like some little windows, and so I want to add them all the way around. So I'm going to go to top view, I'm going to go to wireframe in edit mode, and I'm going to box select this side here, and then also box select this half side here. And I'm going to delete the vertices, also delete those vertices, so we just have a quarter of the object. So now let's add a mirror modifier on the modifier properties, and I'm going to mirror it on the X and Y, and we're also going to turn on clipping. So now you can see we just have a quarter of the object. So now I'm going to create some windows here. So I'll go to the face select, and what I'm going to do is skip the first 4. So the first 4 faces, and then I'll select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you can see there's 4 more that I'm skipping. So just the 8 in the middle. And I'm going to just inset these faces and inset them way down. And you can see when I inset this way down, it's kind of overlapping. Right there, you can see it's overlapping. So after I inset this down, I'll just go to the vertex select the vertex, and double tap G to edge slide it back, and double tap G to edge slide it back, and we can select everything and just hit M, and we can just merge by distance. So it's just going to remove those 2 vertices which are overlapping. Let's go to the face select now, and I'm just going to box select all these faces, and I'm just going to inset these faces back in there, and that's going to be our window. I also want to add another window here, so I'm going to select these 8 faces here, and I'm going to inset these faces and just bring them down so they're pretty small, and then we can also scale it down the Z-axis and then extrude the window back in there. So we have those windows there, and they're all the way around the lander. All right, so now what I'm going to do is apply the mirror so that it's easier to model the bottom. So I'll just click on the drop down and apply the mirror. Let's go to wireframe, and we'll go into edit mode, and we'll go to front view. So let's just box select the bottom, and we're going to bring it up just about right there. So you can see in the Blender grids, there's about 1.5 grids until the end of that. Let's now extrude this down, and then we're going to inset this, or scale it down, not inset it, but scale it, just like that, so it kind of caves in. And then we're going to extrude the entire thing down on the Z-axis. And then we're going to extrude it down again, and then we're going to scale it down, just like that. Let's go to solid view, and we're going to extrude it and then scale it down. And then we're going to extrude it and scale it up, just like that, and we'll scale it in a little bit, and then just fill that face there. And I think if I go to wireframe, I'm going to box select this part and just scale it up a little bit, because this is where one of the engines is going to come out, and then some other smaller engines will come around there on the side. And also I think this entire thing might be a little bit too small, so if I go to front view, go to wireframe, I might just box select this entire thing and bring it up a little bit. So you can see this entire bottom part of the lander from the center here is about 1, 2, 3, 4 grids, just about that long. So let's now go up to the top here. We'll go into edit mode, and if I just select that loop, we're going to fill a face there. And then what we're going to do is duplicate this piece, and we're just going to scale it up and scale it in there. And I want to just hit P and separate this by selection so that it's its own object. And we'll go into edit mode, and we're just going to extrude everything down so it has some thickness. And then we're going to select the entire thing and bring it in. Let's go to top view. We'll go to wireframe, and I'm just going to bring it over here into this corner. Just like that, kind of bring it right over there and up a bit. And we'll also scale it up to make it longer and then bring it down in like this. Now this little piece here, I'm going to have sort of like a little crosshair, and we're going to add it using a decal. And so this is going to be like when the spaceship is docking with like a space station or something. So now let's just select the main object again, and we're going to add some modifiers. So we're going to add a bevel modifier, and let's turn these segments up to 2 or maybe actually a 3. And then I can just drag the amount down, and let's just make the amount pretty small. And then let's also add the weighted normal. So it's just going to sharpen up those flat faces. And then I want to add the same modifiers to this object. So if we select this object, shift select the other object, we can just use Control L, and we're just going to copy modifiers. And then for this object, I'm just going to turn the bevel segments to 2. So there we go. That's kind of the basic shape of the lander. I do want to model a little bit of extra details right up here though. So if I just go into edit mode and just go to the vertex select and select one of these loops, I'll duplicate them and move them up and separate them into their own object. And then if I just select the new object, we'll go into edit mode, and I'll select everything and bring it down and then extrude it up like that. And then I can extrude it out, scale it, and then extrude it and bring it down. And then if I select everything, we can recalculate the normals, because some of the normals are flipped, and maybe bring the entire thing down a bit more. So now what I want to do is add a few loop cuts here. So I'll just add a loop cut right up there, and then another loop cut there. And if I go to the face select, we'll select all of the loops of faces, and we're going to extrude it hit escape, and then you can use Alt S to scale it along the normals and just scale it in there. And then if I select everything, maybe I'll make everything a little bit smaller, so we have just some more details. So now what I want to do is model like some little pieces which come up and then kind of move over. And again, that's going to be kind of that mechanism which will like dock with a space station or something. So I will go into edit mode of this object, and I'm going to select 8 faces. So if I go to top view, let's just go down here and we'll select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to duplicate these and we're going to separate them into their own object. And then in edit mode, what I want to do is center the 3D cursor. So hit Shift C to center the 3D cursor. And I'm going to change the transform pivot point to the 3D cursor. So if I select everything, I can scale everything in by the center point. So I'm going to scale everything in like that, just so that this part here that we duplicated is in there, and we'll bring it down. Then we're going to extrude the faces up and extrude them up on the Z axis. And then if we just go to side view, we'll go into wireframe and we're going to extrude this up, and then let's just scale it. And I want to scale it in, but I don't want to scale it along the Z axis. So we're going to scale it, and then we're going to hit Shift Z to exclude the Z axis. And we'll just kind of bring that in just like that. So now you can see it kind of comes up and then goes in. And we can also scale this along the Y axis just to make it a bit thicker and then kind of bring it in there, just like that. Let's change the transform pivot point back to the median point. We can even scale it up a little bit thicker. So now I want to have 3 of these objects. So if we go to top view, we're going to duplicate it, and then we're going to rotate it. You can see the origin point is still in the center, so it's going to rotate from the center point. So we're going to rotate it by 120 degrees, and then we'll duplicate it again. We'll rotate it and type in 120 degrees. So there we go. We now have 3 of them evenly placed all the way around. So now I want to add a few more details kind of around here and just add some more details to the object. So we're going to go back into edit mode, and let's go to front view, and I'm going to select 8 faces again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to duplicate these and then use Alt S to scale along the normals and just scale that out a little bit, and then scale it down on the Z axis. And we're going to separate this by its own object. So we're going to select the new object, and in edit mode, we're going to extrude it, and we're going to extrude it back in there and maybe scale the entire thing down a little bit and bring it in just like that. And then we also need to recalculate the normals. So now what I want to do in object mode is just hit Shift D to duplicate, then hit R to rotate it along the Z axis by 90 degrees. And then since we did that all in one action, just use Shift R to repeat the last action so it's all the way around. Let's do the same thing, but for a smaller piece. So in edit mode, I'm going to select these 2 faces, and we're going to duplicate it, and then we're going to separate it into its own object. And then if we select the new object, we'll scale it down, and then we're going to scale the entire thing up and scale along the normals so it's brought out a little bit, and then we can extrude it back in. And then I think we need to recalculate the normals again. So all in one action in object mode, we're going to duplicate it, we're going to rotate it along the Z axis by 90 degrees, and then use Shift R to repeat the last action. So you just have those little plates all the way around. Now let's do that one more time. So in edit mode, I'm going to go to top view. We're going to select these 2 faces. We're going to duplicate it, bring it up, and let's scale it, and let's scale it along the Y so it's a bit smaller. All right, like that. And then I want this to be more of a square shape. So let's actually just go to the vertex select. We're going to select these vertices, and we're going to delete, and we're going to dissolve the edges. And then if we select these 2, let's just scale these down like that so it's more of a square shape. So we'll select the entire thing, and we're going to separate it into its own object. And then in its own object, we're going to extrude it down in edit mode. Let's also recalculate the normals and bring it down a little bit. And then we'll do the same thing. So Shift D, we're going to rotate it 90, and then Shift R to repeat the last action. And then if we select all 4 of these, we're going to duplicate them and rotate them by 45 degrees. Now all these different little objects here, these objects have a bevel segments of 3, and that's actually a little bit high. And once we model the entire thing, if the bevel segments is too high, the scene might get a little bit laggy. So if I just select all of these little pieces here, so just make sure you select all of those pieces. What I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key and then click on this arrow just to bring that over to 2 segments. And you can see because I held down the Alt key, it did it for all of them because they all had the bevel. So now they just have 2 segments, so the topology is a bit smaller. Also for this object here, we can turn it to 2, and I'll do that the same thing for these. So just turn the bevel segments to 2, but this object, since it's the main object and you can kind of see more of it, I'll keep the segments up to 3. So now what I want to do is model like some solar panels, and the solar panels are going to kind of come out on some arms. So I'll center the 3D cursor and I'm going to add a cube. And I'll go into edit mode and I'll bring the cube over, and then we can add a mirror modifier, and we're going to mirror it over on the y-axis. Now I actually want the solar panels to come out on the x-axis, so if we go back to object mode, I'll just rotate the object in object mode by 90 degrees, and then I can apply the rotation, and now instead of mirroring it over on the y-axis, we can mirror it over on the x-axis. Let's just bring it over here to this side, and I'll just scale this way down. So it's going to be a lot more thin. And then let's also bring it up on the z-axis. And I also want to mirror it on the z. So it's going to be mirrored up and down like that. Let's scale the entire thing down and just bring it down here. Now I want to merge these two together. So we're going to turn on the clipping button. But what I need to do is go to the face select and select this face and just delete the faces. And then if we select the entire thing, we'll bring it down on the z-axis. Just like that, so they're merged together. And we'll bring that back a little bit. So now let's go to the face select, and we're going to inset that face there, and then we're going to extrude that face back just a little bit, and then that's where the solar panels are going to be. So now what I want to do is make the solar panels kind of have an arm here, which is going to connect to the object or connect to the lander. So we'll center the 3D cursor, we're going to add a new object, and that new object is going to be a cylinder. If I go to the add cylinder settings, I can just turn the vertices back to the default of 32, and we'll go into edit mode, and we're going to bring this over, scale it way down, and we can rotate it by 90 on the x-axis. So scale that down, and we'll go to front view, and I'm just going to bring this over, scale it down, and just bring it over right there, and then we can just kind of scale it up a little bit. Then we're going to duplicate the entire thing and scale it in, and then scale it up, so it has like some thickness there, so it's more thick. And this piece we're going to extrude there, and it's going to connect to the solar panels. So what we're going to do is select these two faces here on either side. We're going to delete those faces, and then what we're going to do is we're going to select just half of it. So if we go to wireframe, let's just box select these faces here and these faces here, or select the vertices, and we're just going to select half of that cylinder like that, and we're going to delete the vertices. So now if we select these two vertices on this side and these two on this side, we can just extrude those back in right there into the solar panel. So now if we select that side, we'll fill a face there, and select that side and we'll fill a face there. So that is going to be the hinge with the piece connecting to the solar panel. Now what I actually want to do is go to top view, and we're going to select this entire piece. So hit L with your mouse hovered over the piece, and we're going to scale it down on the x-axis, and let's bring it over here to this side. And then we can just add a loop cut in the very center of this piece, and we'll go into wireframe, box select this side, and delete the vertices. So now we can just add a mirror modifier, and we're going to mirror it over on the y-axis, and we'll turn on clipping, just like that. So there we go, we have those two pieces. And what I want to do is have the other kind of hinge piece or the arm piece in between these. So let's just scale these down and bring this out like that so the other piece can connect with that hinge. So now what I'm going to do is select that loop right there in the center, and we're going to duplicate it and move it out, and let's separate it into its own object. And with the new object, we can delete the mirror, and in edit mode, we're going to rotate it on the z-axis by 90, and let's extrude the entire thing over like that, and we'll scale the entire thing down and stick it there into that kind of hinge piece. So that's going to be kind of like the arm, which can kind of rotate the solar panels in and out, or kind of rotate the position. So then over here on this side, I want to select this object, and we'll duplicate it, move it over, and in edit mode, I'll select everything, and I'll scale it along the X by -1 just to flip it, and then we can recalculate the normals. You just stick it right there kind of on the edge of the lunar lander. And then also, if I just go to the face select a face, I'll duplicate a face and scale it out so it's longer, and we can just extrude that down. So we have a little plate which is kind of connecting it to the lander. Alright, so we finished all the modeling for that, but I want to add the same modifiers. So if I just hold down the shift key, select all of these objects that we just made, I'm going to lastly just select one of these objects, and then use Control L and just copy the modifiers. Now, I actually need to fix that. You can see when I copied the modifiers, it got rid of the mirror modifier. Let's hit Control Z to undo that. So if I just select all of these objects have mirror modifiers. So what I can do is hit Control A, and we can do Visual Geometry to Mesh, and that will apply the mirror modifiers. So now select the solar panels, and then shift select one of these objects, and we'll use just Control L and copy modifiers. So now they all have the same modifiers. So now we're going to be modeling an antenna. So we'll center the 3D cursor, and I'm going to add a new cube. Let's bring the cube over and just bring it up here. And I want to scale the cube way down. Let's bring it down here. and then just apply the scale of the object because we scale it way down. So when we add like the bevel modifier, the size won't be messed up. So in edit mode, I'm going to scale it up a little bit. Let's scale it down there, and then we'll add 2 loop cuts. So add 2 loop cuts right there, and we'll scale the loop cuts up a bit. And then if we go to the face select, we'll select this face and we'll just bring the face out a bit like that. So we have kind of a cool beveled edge. And then in the same objects edit mode, we're going to add a cylinder. Let's just go into wireframe. There's the cylinder. So we'll bring it over here. We'll scale up on the Z axis and scale it way down just so we have that little antenna piece. Go back to solid view. We can just bring this over, scale it down, and just stick it there onto this side. And as far as the height of it goes, I just want it to be a little bit taller. So if I go to front view, I'll just make it about that high. That's pretty good. So now I'll go to the add menu and add another cube, and we're gonna bring this cube up. Let's go to front view. I'll scale the cube way down and bring the cube right over there. And if we go to side view, we can just bring it there on top of the antenna. Let's scale up on the Z axis, go back to front view, and just kind of fix the shape of that. All right, just like that. So now if we go to the face select here and select this face, we will extrude this out and scale it down the Z axis. So we kind of get a cool like beveled edge there. And then we select this piece, let's bring that back a little bit. And then if I select everything, let's maybe make it a bit longer and just bring it in there. So now I just want to add kind of some cool details to this. So if I just select this face, we'll duplicate the face, scale it down here. And I'm just going to kind of add a few more details. So maybe extrude this back in. All right, scale that out a bit, bring that in a little bit. We'll duplicate this entire piece and let's make it more of like a square shape like that. And we'll bring this in. So just stick that there. Then we will duplicate this. Let's scale it down and make another little piece here. And we'll be adding a few different materials to this so you can kind of see those details better. And then let's go to wireframe and we're going to go to the vertex select and we're just going to select that loop there. And we'll duplicate it, go back to solid view, and we can now rotate this by 90 degrees and extrude it back. So if we select the entire thing, we can just bring it up here and just stick it right there to add some more details and then duplicate it and move it down and maybe bring everything back in a little bit. And if we select everything, we will recalculate the normals. So there we go, we now have an antenna with like some cool details on the top. So then we want to add the same modifiers, so select this piece, select this last, Control L, and we will use copy modifiers. Now if I zoom in here, you can see the bevel's a bit too big. So let's turn the bevel amount smaller to maybe just like a 0.02 or a 0.001, just so it's a little bit smaller of a bevel. Now I don't know why this happened. I might have accidentally deleted the objects. I might need to go back at the recording and see what mistake I made, but you can see that the hinge here, or the arm piece, isn't actually connecting to this solar panel. So what I'm going to do is go into edit mode, and I'm just going to delete this side of the solar panel. So delete that. Now what I can do is just add the mirror modifier back to these objects, and that way it'll have the mirror modifier, so when we add the materials will be mirrored over as well. So on each one of these objects, we're just going to add the mirror modifier and just mirror it over on the x-axis. So just add the mirror modifier to that object. Now you can see for this object, the origin point wasn't in the center because I duplicated it. So what I can do with this object selected is go down to the mirror, and on the mirror object, I can just choose this cylinder here, which is the center. So there we go. Now you can see we have the object mirrored over. So we have the solar panels on that side and that side. So let's just hit Control S to save, and this is going to wrap it up for the first part. So basically all the top part of the lunar lander has been modeled. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you're enjoying the tutorial series. And if you'd like to help support the channel and purchase the finished tutorial project files, you can do that with the links in the description on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, and you'll get all the textures and all the resources that you'll need to follow along with the tutorial. You'll also get some reference images and blueprints, and you'll also get the finished Blender file and the final render. So in the next part, we're going to continue with the modeling. So when the next part is released, it'll be right up there on the end screen, and I'll have it linked in the video description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.